She's an award-winning writer, a hunting guide, archery and rifle instructor, keynote speaker, and all-around outdoors woman who encourages you to get outside, hunt, fish, shoot, and savor all that life has to offer. And now, here's your host, Mia Anstine.
Hey, hi, hello, you all. Welcome to the Mac Outdoors Podcast. If it is your first time here, I am so thankful that you stopped by. I do hope you enjoy the show. And for those who are returning, thank you for being here. It's a great community, and I do appreciate you so much. If you do enjoy the show, I do hope that you would be willing to share it with a friend, colleague, or somebody that you think could learn from the episodes. Today, I have Laurine Wolf. She is with the Safari Club International Foundation, and we are going to be visiting about the foundation itself because some people don't realize there is a foundation with SCI. And we're also going to be talking about some projects that they have in the works. We have been doing a women's empowerment series, and I am going to be attending an event with the foundation that is going to be part of a women's project, and hopefully we're going to be having a lot more to come. So if you would like to learn more about conservation, wildlife, and hunting events, stay tuned.
This summer, whether at the range or in the field, WSI Sports Hyper-Tech bamboo tanks, tees, and leggings will have you covered. Visit WSISports.com to support the show and use the affiliate code MACO10 for 10% off your purchase. All products are proudly made in the USA. WSI is bringing back pride in American-made clothing. Again, that code is MACO10 for 10% off your order at WSISports.com.
Welcome to the show, Laurine. I am so happy that you're here, and I was excited to receive messages from you, I guess back in November or December, somewhere between Thanksgiving and Christmas, talking about some events and so forth. And for you and for the listeners, a lot of them know that I'm highly involved with SCI, with Safari Club International. I'm a regional rep. I'm on several committees, and I do a lot of different things. But I met you because you're with the foundation. And so if you would you just introduce yourself to my listeners and let them know who you are and what you do?
Yes, great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here today. So I'm Laurine Wolf, and I am the Deputy Director of Education and Humanitarian Services for Safari Club International Foundation. So we have SCI, which is Safari Club International, and then we have the foundation. And the two of them work pretty closely together. And so I always like to explain it because sometimes there's confusion on how we work together and how we're different. And so really what it comes down to is if you think about Safari Club International, we have Safari Club International and the foundation, then we have several committees that fall under both of them. And primarily most of those fall under the foundation side. And so while SCI defends our hunting rights to like government bodies around the world, SCIF promotes sound research, wildlife conservation and management initiatives, and education projects. So we're sort of the arm that handles that piece, but there's a lot of overlap. And so we work together on certain initiatives as well as the one that you're familiar with, that Women Go Hunting initiative.
Yeah, and so the Women Go Hunting initiative, I haven't shared a ton of that on the podcast, but I definitely need to. I think I mentioned it in my New Year's recap. I shared a little snippet from the video, and I did a live, and I don't think the audio was on, but people can go to the YouTube and watch that little piece of video, and there are links to watch the whole video. But that was something for me, here we are going into a new year, and for a year-end recap, last January is when we filmed that, and it was a really big deal to me because I've always looked at myself as a mentor to others. And so I, at the time, didn't understand that it was the foundation behind that, doing education. And so tell me about the idea and what was behind it, because I guess there was more than I even knew.
Yes, so the idea behind that, and I came aboard after, they pushed that program and we got started on it, but I can speak to it pretty well. So the program came about, first of all, thanks to a generous donation, a grant from the Hunter Legacy Fund. They donated the money to help support that project. And the idea behind it was sort of twofold, but really it was geared more towards middle school students and into the outdoors. So into the outdoors has a incredible network. In fact, they work very closely with PBS Learning. They have their own website where they host not only videos, they're hosted by youth, which is great. And then they also provide lesson plans. And then there's a lot of overlap between their different programs. So they focus on specific areas. It might be aquatic education. It might be wildlife conservation. It might be outdoor recreation. And so we decided we were going to partner with them. And we created this video with you and Leah. And the idea behind it was really to speak to how women, the more and more women are hunting, why they're hunting, but also the role that they play in conservation. And so that's how that kind of came to fruition. And so we worked with Into the Outdoors on the production side of it as well.
Okay. And that's, I guess, more what I knew on my end was the Into the Outdoors and where it would be going, but I didn't know the background of how it came to be. So that's something I'm learning today, and I love to learn something every day. So very cool. That video, I think it turned out really nice. I've been involved in a lot of different productions. I've actually been in a book. I've been featured Why Women Hunt. So I've been part of a lot of different things, but you always wonder, what is the product going to look like and what is the messaging going to be like? And so I was really impressed with that. And so for the listeners, I will again link that project in the show notes for you guys to go check it out and watch that video. It's I think it's good, and that's not just saying that I'm so great, but I think the production was good and the messaging that they put in there was very good. So yeah, but thank you for giving me some background on that. And so you just recently came on to the foundation. How long have you been with the foundation?
I guess it isn't. In my mind, it's recently because the last organization I was with for 13 years. But I came on about mid-March of 2023.
Okay, and so you're one of those. You're like, I'm not really new anymore, because some people will lean on the new for years, and it's like, no, you're not new anymore. Well, so when you came on, what's your prime focus, or are you just developing these programs and the outreach and education, or what's your main goal?
So my role there's a multitude of things that I'm kind of taking charge of and overseeing. One is that we have the education department that falls underneath the foundation. And underneath that department, we have the International Wildlife Museum. And then we also have education programs that SCIF fund and focus on, but then we also have education programs that SCIF and Sables partner on. And so Sables, and I can speak a little bit more to that later, they are the committee that focuses on raising funds for education programs for the foundation. And so we work very closely with them too as well. And when I came aboard, they had already landed on some education programs that they wanted to potentially pursue. And one of them was the customized education program, which I was very excited about. And that came to fruition and sort of it came out of we used to have the ALLS program, which was the American Wilderness Leadership School. And what was decided by the board was that we would close that facility and expand our reach geographically. So before at the school, educators would come there. They come there for a week. They'd learn about not just hunting, but also aquatic education, terrestrial education, several different programs that were in place. And then the idea was that they would go back into the classroom and teach those things to the students. Well, the board decided, let's expand our reach geographically. And so that's sort of where the customized education program came out of. So we work with sponsoring organizations, and it could be a state agency, like in the case with, and I'll speak to this a little bit, New Mexico Game and Fish. It could be like right now we're working on a program for the Salvation Army. It could be an NGO. It could be wildlife professionals. The audience is fairly broad. And the idea is that it's a cost neutral program for the foundation. So the sponsoring organization helps to pay for the cost of the program. And then we would be providing the curriculum and the staff. And the nice thing about it is that the sponsoring organization really decides on what curriculum they want to focus on. We have a variety of different topics that we can speak to and teach on, whether it's wildlife diversity, whether it's aquatic education, terrestrial education. It could be shooting sports. It could also be the science behind wildlife management. They get to decide. and then we build a program for them. And those programs usually run 2 to 3 days. And so what came out of that when I came aboard, because my background is I worked for 13 years before I came here for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, which is a state agency. And what I learned as the education bureau chief there is a lot of different state agencies want to focus on R3. They want to expand their reach, but they lack the staff capacity to do it. And so when I came aboard, I said, hey, let's start reaching out to some state agencies and seeing if we can be that, that vehicle for them and help them with that. Because a lot of them want to do that, but they just don't have the staff capacity. So we reached out to New Mexico Game and Fish, and they were already thinking that as well. And so that's how we ended up getting, they put out a bid, and that's how we became a vendor for them. And we're having multiple conversations with other state agencies as well.
And I like to hear that, because with the R3, that's something that, so for the listeners, R3 is an initiative to reactivate, recruit, reactivate, and retain the hunters. And so with that, a lot of people, obviously we want to do it and everybody wants to do it, but that's been a challenge for the past several years, is how do we do it? And so it's nice that you guys can be a bridge for that to help facilitate and see what the needs are in different areas, because that obviously is another challenge, is, what you need in Montana is going to probably be different than what they might want in New Mexico or California or somewhere else. So I think that's really neat that you're working that way. With the customized education programs, is that, you said you're working with different state agencies. Are you also working with other nonprofits? I've had a Girl and a Gun. I have some other women's programs that are coming on board. Could they reach out to the foundation to see if they could collaborate with you and team up?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly our focus. We have the state agencies, but we're also focusing on NGOs as well. That's how we have this relationship that's developing with the Salvation Army, because they have camps all over the country, and they want to train their staff to be able to run these camps and integrate outdoor recreation, and particularly the shooting sports. And in their case, they really focus on NASP, which is National Archery in the Schools program. So absolutely, yeah, we love partnering with individuals and other organizations.
And that's great to know, because I know some of them, it's challenging to find the support to do some of the projects that they're trying to do. So, and really what I'm learning is there are a ton of groups doing a ton of things. And I don't know if each one has their own little niche, or, if they could come together and do one big thing. I'm not sure which is the best way, but I've been sharing stories with a women's empowerment series of different women who are doing different things for mentoring or for experienced hunters or shooters, or learning how to track, learning how to forage, stuff like that. So I think it's great to see that there is another avenue to help support those programs.
Josh will probably speak to one of the great things that we have, a resource that we have, is we have the SCI chapters. So that is another sponsoring organization that can get involved. And sometimes it's, financially they're helping sponsor, but sometimes they're just helping with finding volunteers for us, or, mentors. And I've been working quite a bit on that with the New Mexico Game and Fish programs, reaching out to that SCI chapter. Also, I've been having conversations with the Michigan chapters, because they're doing a lot in the area of, there's a woman there that's been just really taking charge of developing a mentor program. So we've been having conversations with her recently on how we can help her and support her in her endeavors. So yeah, there's a lot of resources that we should hopefully be able to provide another organization.
That's excellent. And speaking of other chapters, I was at the Four Corners chapters board meeting last night, and they invited me to come help on a New Mexico event. And I really started laughing when they brought the paper out. So I was like, oh, well, thanks for inviting me.
Great that you're there. Yeah, Jason, and he said he was going to present it at the board meeting. So I'm glad he did. I'm glad to hear he did. That's great.
Yeah. And I think a couple of people there, they're interested. I don't know. The waterfowl hunt is so close that I don't think they'll be able to help with that, but they were interested in the next one. So I don't know if you want to tell us a little about those events that you guys have coming up.
So, like I said, it came out of what I was telling you about how state agencies are struggling with finding that staff capacity. And most state agencies, I mean, as people are really familiar with, they have their hunter education program and they're really dialed in and they have great infrastructure for recruitment, right? But then it gets to once they recruit that hunter, what next? And that skills building piece. And so that's what these programs are around, is helping those people who've either gone through hunter ed, or in the case like with the women's duck hunt that we're going to be putting on, is they have a little bit of hunting maybe underneath them, but they want an opportunity to build those skills even more. And their focus is one on underserved populations, which we were very excited about. And as you know, one of those underserved populations is women, but also minorities as well. So that was really of interest to us. So the programs that we put in our bid and for small and big game hunts, and we were selected as a vendor. And so the first two hunts that they have kind of channeled our way was this women's duck hunt that'll be coming up that you're going to be involved in. I'll let you speak to that. That'll be through the 19th through the 21st. And it'll be at Lake Cabello State Park in Truth and Consequence, New Mexico. And what was really exciting about that is we sort of planted the seed with them, like, hey, let's try a women hunt. I really feel that there's a demand there. It's, we got to try this. And they said, let's do it. And we filled that program within an hour after opening registration. So that tells you everything. There's a lot of women out there that are interested in hunting. And so that's one of them. And we'll have about 20 participants there. The program will focus on obviously duck hunting, but there's also, it's a 3-day program and we want to make sure that they have the skills. So we're going to be focusing on firearm safety, ethics. We'll also be focusing on target shooting, clay practice target shooting. We will be focusing, we'll have before they show up, an online orientation on the preparing for the hunt, what to bring, making sure, because this is camp style. And then we'll also focus on duck ID. We'll focus on field dressing and meal preparation. And then it's also just an opportunity for women, like-minded women, to get together, particularly in the evenings, to sort of build that camaraderie. And what I'm hoping comes out of it is they've also built those connections with other women within the state that maybe they can go on to have those, relationships to go out hunting amongst themselves too as well. So we're pretty excited about it. And I'll let you speak to a little bit. That's why I reached out to you, because I know that you focus on this and I thought you'd be a great addition. And I'm really excited that you, and pleased that you accepted being a part of it, because I think that's going to make a huge difference for us.
Well, I hope to make a big difference. And it's something, as I said, I mean, I live to help touch others' lives and mentor them. So it's something that, okay, I'm going to squeeze this in my schedule. I'm going to make it work, and get it figured out. But something that I really like about doing things like this, because I've traveled to do other events and just be there where if I'm the expert or if I'm not the expert, be there as a mentor for moral support, but also to help build the community, because I think that's something that a lot of people are missing, is a community. And, maybe in your everyday lives, you guys are completely different directions, but through this one event, you can come together and you have something in common. And it's amazing to watch people develop as they go through a simple either 2-day or 3-day process, and the growth and confidence that might come out of an event. And I have been at those events, as I said, as an experienced hunting guide, an outfitter, a longtime hunter that grew up in a hunting family. I went to one event and I had it on last year, maybe January, February. I'll link it in the show notes to the show, but I had the Wyoming Women's Antelope Hunt on, and that's an event up in Wyoming. It's huge. And I was invited as a mentor, and they pair you up with a mentee. Well, my mentee was a daughter of a hunting guide. She had hunted too. So it was like, well, who needs to be mentored here, And come to find out, I needed to be mentored by her, because at the time I was going through some struggles in my life. And this courageous, at the time, I think she was 15 or 16 years old, but this courageous young lady, just like, we connected. And, here I am, I'm like, I'm supposed to be the mentor. And it was like, we switched roles. So it's really neat how that can happen, and how you can just learn and grow through these programs. So I'm excited to go and meet people and see what I learn, and also what I can share with others. years.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great approach to it. And then the other hunt we have coming up with them would be our quail hunt, and it'll be adult quail hunt, and that will be February 9th through the 11th, and it'll be in the same location. It'll be the Lake Cabello State Park in Truth and Consequence, and then I'm anticipating that they will be reaching out to us next for a fall big game hunt, and that's going to require a lot more logistics. We're going to be needing to find either a private land that would open up to us, but we're going to be working on that. But that we're really excited for. And when we're thinking big game, it'll probably be, we're not quite sure, but we're thinking either turkey or perhaps deer. We're just not sure yet.
Yeah, well, turkey will be coming up. I mean, that's going to be here before we know it. So that might be something.
Not this year. I'm talking about next year. Yeah.
Okay. Turkey hunting is fun. So when you said adult hunt, is that one going to be co-ed?
It'll be co-ed.
Yeah. Okay. And it's still around 20 people or something like that?
Yep, around 20 people. We like to keep it no more than 20 just because we want to make sure that people get that real experience and more have one-on-one. And it's just much more, it's safer, we feel like, and also much more manageable.
So with either of these events, if it's somebody, do they have to have experience with firearms and they need to have their hunter ed?
They need to have their hunter's ed, but they also, it depends on the program. For the women's duck hunt, we are asking them to have some experience in the field. And this will be just an opportunity to build on those skills. And then the same thing to a degree with the adult quail hunt, but we're not requiring quite as much experience, but we really wanted them to come to the women's duck hunt with some experience and just have this as an opportunity, like you were speaking to, of building that community, connecting with other women and supporting one another, but also probably more than likely there will be women there that maybe have gone on one duck hunt or have hunted quail, but this will help for just building those skills, kind of a refresher too for them as well.
I think it's awesome. It's definitely an excellent thing to do. So I have another question for you. You had mentioned Montana, and so are you from Montana?
So I grew up in Arizona, but I spent my summers in Montana with my father because he lived in Montana. And so that's sort of how I ended up in Montana as an adult. I went to school at the University of Montana, but then I left Montana for a while.
You're Grizz.
And I was a Grizz. And I lived in a lot of different states, Minnesota being one of them, Washington being another. My heart was always in Montana. And then I adopted a young girl out of foster care. And I wanted her to be closer to her family. And I loved Montana. And she was very interested in the outdoors. And I wanted to foster that in her. And so I grew up in a hunting family. I am not a hunter, but she loved the idea of hunting. And so I knew that if we got back to Montana, she would have that opportunity. And then her father also really instilled that love for hunting in her as well. And so that was a good move for me. And when I went back to Montana, I took a position with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And in that course of time with them and over the 13 years, I really learned even more of the important role that hunting plays in conservation. And a lot of the conservation success stories, not just of game species, but of non-game and endangered species, threatened species, and the role that it plays in that. Those conservation success stories is amazing. And the value that they bring, not just, financially and fiscally, that's how a lot of these state agencies are funded to do that work, but that also that even boots on the ground helping with conservation. We had mountain lion hunters, for example, that were helping our biologists get DNA samples. And so there's a lot of involvement. And they really opened up that door and that window for me to be able to see that. And that's how I became so passionate about promoting hunting and recruiting hunters, and because I have a real love for conservation. So that's kind of where that stemmed from.
I'm really happy and amazed to hear you say that, because it seems like one of my goals in educating people is to help them understand what you just said. And that's the connection with the science of it and the hunting part of it and how it all kind of works together. And that's where the American Wilderness Leadership School it helped those teachers give that message to students. But I know through the pandemic and all of that, there was a lot of issues and struggles and trying to get people there and all of that. And so I think now that you guys are expanding, you're going to reach more people, and teachers, educators can still show up to go to an event. I think that is really great. And I also think it's nice that you had the forethought to involve a youngster that you brought in there, to involve that person in that type of a lifestyle so that they could learn about it as well.
Yeah, it was important to me. And she was always a natural athlete to begin with. And then it was really her father. He has been in the hunting industry for most of his career, that really took the time to foster that more one-on-one, but connecting her with other individuals as well. Like, he was very well connected and worked with Craig Boddington, and Brittany Boddington was able to tap that into those resources for our daughter, which I'm really thankful for, because she's very good at it. She's just a natural at it, and she loves it, and started with rabbits, and it quickly moved on to deer. It was not very long before she wanted to, get more and more out in the field and hone those skills. And as you may probably know, Montana is not an easy place to hunt. You have to be physically fit. And he made sure that she was, in the backcountry, sometimes climbing, traversing mountain ranges. So it was not easy going either for her. And she's very tiny. She's like 5 foot. That's it. So I'm very proud of her and how she's fostered that in herself.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's something that I wish more people could connect with, to just understand that. So when you're climbing those huge mountains and you are hunting, you go with a different purpose, and so you look at everything a little differently than if you're just going up to climb a 14er on the trail that thousands of people are going up and down every day. So it
And I really, I can't speak for me personally what hunting, why women hunt, for me personally. But I know what it did for her, and what I really liked to see in her was it really empowered her. It wasn't about necessarily, like, as you get older as a woman, it's, more about getting good meals and good food on the table. But for her, I saw that it really fostered her growth, her self-esteem, and feeling empowered. She felt very empowered to be able to, if it came down to it, she would be able to get food on her table. And so I saw that fostered in her, and I was really excited about it. And I think that does it. I think that happens for a lot of women too. Seeing it with my friends who have gotten into hunting as well.
Yeah. And so, as somebody who's not a hunter, have you ever had the desire to be somebody who's behind the hunt, or you just enjoy facilitating it? What's your point of view on it?
More facilitating it. I went through hunter's ed. I mean, my dad, sort of nurtured it in me, but like I said, I just spent my summers with him, so I didn't really have the opportunity when hunting season usually was taking place. But I did take hunter's ed with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks in Montana. I've gone out on many hunts, but I'm very good at spotting animals. So people like to have me come with them, but I never wanted to go the next step. And I don't know, maybe that'll change someday. I've also worked on the other side, in terms of conservation, but I also oversaw a wildlife rehabilitation center. And that too, I'd like to say, it was a state wildlife rehabilitation center, was funded through hunter license dollars. So I just think that a lot of people miss that big picture of how much conservation is supported by hunting license dollars. But also, I think what people miss sometimes is what I have experienced through my relationships with people who hunt and through my work, is there is such a love for the wildlife itself. And one of my favorite stories is I overseeing this wildlife center. I got a call. It was from a woman, and she said, my brother's out in the field. He's in the backcountry. He has an owl he wants to bring in, but it's going to take him a few hours to get there. Are you open? And I was like, wait, he's in the backcountry? And so really what it came down to is he stopped his hunt to bring in this great horned owl, drove 5 hours to our wildlife center with this great horned owl, dropped it off, and said, I don't know what's going on with it, but it can't fly. And it turned out it had a broken wing. And then he just left and went back to his hunt. So I think that that's the piece that a lot of non-hunters may miss, is just that absolute passion and love for wildlife. And it extends to conservation. And that makes sense, because when you're out in the field, you develop a relationship with these animals. And when you have a particular species that you love to focus on, you learn everything about that species. and you just develop a love for it. It naturally evolves that way.
It's something got chills just listening to you say that, because in Colorado, you may or may not know that we have wolves that have been introduced here. And it's not that I don't like wolves, but I also, they were migrating in. So I'm like, let's just deal with them gradually as they come. And I think the hardest thing for me is that even though I'm a hunter, I don't want to see an animal suffer. And so that's why I practice. And when I teach hunter ed, or when I teach hunting classes, or I do range courses to do hunting scenarios and field scenarios and stuff. And I want people to be a good shot. I want them to have a nice, successful hunt, because I don't want an animal to suffer. And that's something that I don't think it has been easy to portray to a non-hunter, is that compassion that we have for wildlife. Because I was in a round table, and for the listeners, they've heard this story probably a million times, is I was in a round table with Jim Zumbo one time at a conference, and he said, how is it that we as hunters can watch the waterfowl fly by in the sunrise and we admire them with awe, which I sit on my back patio with my coffee cup when it's warmer. It's kind of cold right now to do it. And I watch the geese fly over, or the ducks. And I love them. I admire them. Yet I also have a hunting blind in the winter where I go and waterfowl hunt. And it's something, that connection is very hard to describe and explain to somebody. It's hard to verbalize. So it's been my goal over the years, is to, somebody please just give me a clear answer to this.
Yeah, it is. And I think it comes out of, and I mean, I think that's just maybe human nature, where and that was one of the things that I did a lot of my focus over my career has been on large carnivores, like your bears, your mountain lions, your wolves. And I think what I've always tried to focus on is you have a lot of these different stakeholders, and they have their different viewpoints. But I think where we make the mistake is to put these stakeholders in these little boxes. And I'll give you the example, like, okay, you have a stakeholder that is a hunter. And when you're talking about wolves, and the perception or the stereotype is that, there's different layers, but like that a hunter doesn't want to see wolves on the landscape because it's competing for the same, for the same deer and elk that they are trying to get, or they just want to use them as game animals and shoot them. And I think we make the mistake sometimes, generally we put people in these little boxes, but I know of a lot of hunters that hunt wolves, but also own property with livestock and have made great efforts and great strides in trying to, at first, try to mitigate for wolf management in non-lethal ways. But that doesn't always work, and I won't go down that path, but it doesn't always work. But I think we need to be careful of that. And it's the same thing with even wildlife advocates. Sometimes we put them in this box that all advocates think this way. But in my career, working with a lot of wildlife advocates, I realized that a lot of them actually, they do support hunting. They are very supportive of hunting. They also are very passionate about wildlife advocacy, but I think we just need to be careful of that. And I think when, and I have really good friends that are non-hunters, and we've had lots of conversations around this. And I think part of it is education and educating oneself on the North American model of wildlife conservation, the role that hunting plays in that, but also getting out of stereotyping, as well as not getting into that mode of polarizing, because I don't think that if we can find the common ground, that's how we're going to be successful long term with conservation. We got to find that common ground.
Right. I think that's a great point to kind of end that statement on, is the common ground is so important. And I think part of that is being empathetic to, what a non-hunter wants to see and what a hunter wants to see, and empathetic to, in my opinion, to the wildlife as well. Trying to maintain those healthy populations is so important.
Empathetic to agricultural producers, ag producers that, are dealing with this wildlife in their backyard. And that I think we just need to, and a part of it is just education, and a lot of it's empathy, but understanding it too. And I think that, you can make those strides. And that's one of the things, I really try to get across to people is how many conservation successes have been a result of hunting. And the grizzly bear is just one of them. And so that's another program, and I'll speak to that a little bit if you want, that we're focusing on developing right now with Into the Outdoors, that'll be focusing on the grizzly bear success story and the role that hunters played in that, but also trying to find, once again, that common ground and figuring out how are we going to find a place for this species on the landscape long term. And I like to use that phrase, a place on the landscape, because I think sometimes we forget that there are better places for these species than others. And it's more realistic to maintain a higher level of tolerance with the public if we can figure that out. And so that's what that program is going to focus on.
Yeah, I like that idea, because this is something that I've spoken about a lot, is some of the advocates that I've been on panels with when in this wolf issue, they want things how they were 150 years ago. But the issue is we now have millions of people in our state versus what they had 150 years ago. So we can't go to that. So like you just said, we have to figure out how to find their place and where they're going to be. And usually animals can figure that out on their own. They'll figure out what works for them. I know we've had wolverines in and out of Colorado, and I know there's crowded areas here, and I'm sure there's probably going to be a space when we put them in the state, but it's like, let them figure that out, because we can't figure it out for them. Yeah. They're going to go where they're going to go. So. Yeah. So I have another question for you that we kind of skirted over. You talked about sables, and we'd actually do the Four Corners chapter. I'm not on their board anymore. I'm their regional rep for Colorado. But we do a pheasant hunt. The Four Corners chapter does for women kind of a mentored hunt where they send them to the bluffs in northeast Colorado with the Denver sables. And so it's a mentor education event there, and also build community, kind of like what we're looking forward to. What else is Sables doing? And I mean, you said they raise money for education.
They raise money for education, but just like there you have your SCI and you have the SCIF, right? So then you have the SCI chapters, and so Sables has these Sables chapter committees. And what they do is they focus primarily on education, and sometimes that's raising money for education. Sometimes that is actually putting on education programs for the public. And then it really is up to the chapter which direction they want to go in. And what has kind of evolved out of that is it has become a space for women to find like-minded individuals. And some of them are hunters and some of them are not, but they find these connections with other like-minded women, and they do a lot of fun activities together. And so it could be like you were saying, as a hunt, they're getting together and they're going hunting together, putting on hunts for sometimes the public, but they're also getting together and doing other things. Some of them have book clubs that they've formed, but it's just really a space for them to be able to get together and just build that community that you were speaking of.
Yeah, and earlier. So for my listeners, there's also upcoming here in just a couple of days is going to be a tea party. They've also networked with like a furrier and went and tried on furs and had like a wine and cheese party. And you can buy furs, but also you can just try them on. It's just networking time. They have gone to a cowboy hat maker and tried on cowboy hats, bought cowboy hats, and again had drinks and stuff like that, cocktail hour. So there's a lot of different things. You don't just have to be a hunter, just like Laurine said. So Laurine, this kind of took me down a different area than I thought I was going to go. But so if you want to do an SCI chapter, if you're listening and you're interested in making an SCI chapter, you can contact me directly. You can email me. The email address is contact@miaanstine.com, and I can help you do that. But if you want to form a Sables with your chapter, how do you form a Sables committee?
There is on the foundation website, on the SCIF, the Safari Club International Foundation website, there is you'll see programs, you'll see a drop-down menu and you'll see Sables. If you go to their web pages, there is a tile or a thumbnail for starting your own, either members or committees. In there is a detailed document on how to start one. And I really feel like if you are a member of a chapter and they don't have one, you definitely want to look at this. There's a lot of interest. I went to a lot of the chapter trainings, and there was a lot of interest because I think what's happening is, I'm going to get on my soapbox here. I think that a lot of chapters are starting to recognize, which is a good thing, that there are a lot of women that are either interested in hunting or support hunting, but they're looking for that space. And so when I was at these chapter trainings, there seemed to be quite a bit of interest on how do we start this Sables chapter committee to provide that space for them. So if you already belong to a chapter and you don't have one, you may want to think about approaching your chapter about starting one. But on that website, you'll find a lot of information, and that'll sort of guide you. But you can also reach out to Katie Robinson, and her contact information is on there. She's with SCIF. Or if you have even more questions, we have a committee that focuses on that. But we can definitely get whoever reaches out to you in touch with the right people.
I already know of one that's in the works, so it's good to know like what they've been doing.
So I probably should add too, so you have the Sables at the chapter level, but then there's the Sables at the national level, and they are the ones that really focus on raising those funds for education more at the national level. And so at convention, at the SCI convention, they put on a luncheon every year, and that's the goal of that luncheon, is to raise funds for education. And so if you are going to be at convention, you may want to look into that, maybe buying a ticket. It's a fun event. There's an opportunity. There's a lot of live auction items. They have silent auction items. And then they also have, separate from the luncheon, they'll have a booth there. It'll be under the foundation's booth. More information there. And there will be information there on how to start a chapter. They'll have a seminar that'll be on Saturday at 2:00. And then also there's the dream hunt that they put on. And that also, those proceeds go towards education.
Well, awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing you at convention. It's going to be here before we know it also. Like, time is just flying by.
I know.
Before I let you go, do you have any other things that you think we've missed? I mean, I could probably talk to you for days because you guys are doing so many things, but I think a good overview is important. Any other things that you want to add?
Think so. I just would like to say, I'm excited. I think probably where I'm most, and maybe it's because of my work with Sables and just because I'm a woman, I'm really excited to really start moving forward with developing more women in hunting programs, whether it's learn to hunt programs, but just finding that space for women to not only meet other women, like you were talking, in the capacity of building community and mentors and mentees, but I think there's going to be some exciting things ahead of us, because at convention too, there's also the Women Go Hunting event, and there's a lot of overlap, and we're working together with them to sort of build this coalition of women hunters and finding them opportunities, education opportunities. So stay tuned, because I have a feeling that you'll find even more programs taking place, and probably the best place to look at would be our website or our Facebook page, the Foundation's Facebook page.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to visit with me, and I'll visit with you soon. Are you going to be at the event in TRC?
I will not, only because it's so close to convention, and we're in that last, stages of preparing for the luncheon, and there's a lot to still get together, and so I probably will not be. But
yeah, and that's why I said I'm going to be squeezing it in, but I felt like it's so important that I like, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But thank you for having me on.
Thank you for joining me, and I will see you soon. And for the listeners, I will have all links to what we chatted about in the show notes. And if you have questions, reach out on social media, or you can email contact@miaanstine.com.
Hey, this is Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, host of the Armed Lutheran Radio podcast, reminding you that the podcast you're listening to is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.